Trupyanti neha krupana bahudukavajaha. Kandutivan manasijam vishaheta dhiraha. Kandutivan manasijam vishaheta dhiraha. Yanmaitunadi gruhamed sukam hitucham. Kandu yanena karayoriva dukka dukkam. Trupyanti neha krupana bahudukka vajaha. Kandutivan manasijam vishaheta dhiraha. Yanmaitunadi gruhamedi sukam hitucham. Kandu yanena karayoriva dukka dukkam. Trupyanti neha krupana bahudukka vajaha. Kandutivan manasijam vishaheta dhiraha. Yanmaitunadi gruhamedi sukam hitucham. Kandu yanena karayoriva dukka dukkam. Trupyanti neha krupana bahudukka vajaha. Kandutivan manasijam vishaheta dhiraha. Word to word translation. Yat, that which is meant for material sense gratification. Maithuna adi, represented by talking of sex, reading sexual literature, or enjoying sex life, at home or outside, as in a club. Gruhamedi sukham, all types of material happiness based on attachment to family, society, friendship, etc. He, indeed, tucham, insignificant. Kandu yanena, with the itching, karayoho, of the two hands to relieve the itching. Iva, like. Dukkha, dukkham, different types of unhappiness, into which one is put after such itching sense gratification. Trupyanti, become satisfied. Na, never. Iha, in material sense gratification. Krupanaha, the foolish persons. Bahu dukkha bhajaha, subjected to various types of material unhappiness. Kandutivat, if one can learn from such itching. Manasijam, which is simply a mental concoction. Actually, there is no happiness. Vishaheta, and tolerates such itching. Dhiraha, he can become a most perfect, sober person. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Sex life is compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. Gruhamedis, so-called Gruhasthas who have no spiritual knowledge, think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness, although actually it is a source of distress. The Kripanas, the fools who are just the opposite of Brahmanas, are not satisfied by repeated sensuous enjoyment. Those who are Dhira, however, who are sober and who tolerate this itching, are not subjected to the sufferings of fools and rascals. Purport. Materialists think that sexual indulgence is the greatest happiness in this material world, and therefore they make elaborate plans to satisfy their senses, especially the genitals. This is generally found everywhere and specifically found in the Western world, where there are regular arrangements to satisfy sex life in different ways. Actually, however, this has not made anyone happy. Even the hippies, who have given up all the materialistic comforts of their fathers and grandfathers, cannot give up the sensational happiness of sex life. Such persons are described here as Krupanas, misers. The human form of life is a great asset, for in this life one can fulfill the goal of existence. Unfortunately, however, because of a lack of education and culture, people are victimized by the false happiness of sex life. Prahlad Maharaj therefore advises one not to be misled by this civilization of sense gratification, and especially not by sex life. Rather, one should be sober, avoid sense gratification, and be Krishna conscious. The lusty person, who is compared to a foolish miser, never gets happiness by sense gratification. The influence of material nature is very difficult to surpass, but as stated by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 7.14, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. If one voluntarily submits to the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be saved very easily. In reference to the low-grade happiness of sex life, Yamunacharya says in this connection, Yadavadi mama cheta Krishna padhara vinde nava nava rasadhama nava rasaramanudyata rantumasit tadavadi batanari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikharaha shustu nistivanam cha. Since I have engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in Him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl with distaste. Yamunacharya had formerly been a great king who enjoyed sexual happiness in various ways. But since he later engaged himself in the service of the Lord, he enjoyed spiritual bliss and hated to think of sex life. If sexual thoughts came to him, he would spit with disgust. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Agnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yenam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pasyata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gauravaktaranda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation. Sex life is compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. Gruhamedis, so-called Gruhasthas, who have no spiritual knowledge, think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness, although actually it is a source of distress. The Krupanas, the fools who are just the opposite of Brahmanas, are not satisfied by repeated sensuous enjoyment. Those who are dhira, however, who are sober and who tolerate this itching, are not subjected to the sufferings of fools and rascals. You can see here, very, very strong words are being used in the Bhagavatam to describe something which is so much glorified in this world. Right? So much literature is written about it. So many movies are made about it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Right? And every boy, every girl thinks, my parents, my uncles, my aunts, my grandfather, grandparents, they don't know how to have proper. I will have. And everybody is met with same disappointment in the end. Because you're trying to find something that does not exist in this material world. Prabhupada mentions about Yamunacharya in the purport. Yamunacharya, he was a famous disciple of Rama Mishra. And when he was very young, as a teenager, he was brought up in the Vaishnava tradition and learned Mimamsa. So when he was a very young teenager, he went to the royal court of a king, Pandyan king. His name was Akhilvan. And to debate his royal priest. Those days kings used to have Asthana Pandita, they used to call them. Right? And so, he was brought up in the Vaishnava tradition. The purpose of this debate was to show that, see, just by logic, one cannot understand Krishna consciousness. No, intellectually I'll understand Krishna. So what he did, so when he went there, this king, Akhilvan, he saw that, he's such a small young boy. And he sarcastically said, Ala Vandara. Anybody knows Tamil here? What does Ala Vandara mean? Have you come here to rule? Ala Vandara, he said. So, Yamunacharya, as a teenager, he defeated the royal priest by just logical arguments. He proved that Akhilvan's mother was barren, the king was not righteous, and the queen was unchaste. Meaning, he starts with simple sentences, and by combining logic and discussion, and this end result is, how can Akhilvan's mother be barren? Because he is born. How can he be barren? Right? It doesn't even make logical sense. But by logic, he proved that Akhilvan's mother was barren. By logic, he proved that he started with, king, you are the greatest king, like this, and then he ended with, the proof came finally that he was an unrighteous king. He started with praising the queen and this, and ended up with proving that his wife was unchaste. He was trying to make a point that just by logic and understanding, you can't understand anything. You can prove anything you want in this world by logic. And so the king and queen were so impressed, by his deep understanding of Shastras and also He was not just trying to show off his this thing. He later said, that, see, by logic you can't understand. You have to really take to devotion to understand the Lord. So by his wonderful prowess, he so impressed the king. The king and the queen understood the shortcomings of logic, and they actually adopted him. And the queen, from there, she used to call him Alavandar. Right? And it is said that he was given half the kingdom. Now, that's why Prabhupada says that, in his previous life, in his life earlier, he was a big king and he had enjoyed all these things. So as a king, he enjoyed a lot of pleasures. At that time, he was really not very deeply devoted. Rama Mishra was waiting for the right time, his spiritual master. And at the right time, one day, Rama Mishra arranged for at that time he was not called Yamunacharya. He was Alavandar, let's call him. Alavandar, you arranged him to go to see Ranganatha in Srirangam. It is said that the very first time he saw Lord Ranganatha and his beautiful form, he was so mesmerized right there. And that moment, he became transformed into a wonderful Vaishnava. And he gave up his kingdom right then and there. And he composed what is called a Chatushloki and the Strotra Ratna at the spot. In the Vaishnava tradition, the Chatushloki praises Mother Lakshmi, and it is very commonly sung, and the Strotra Ratna as well. And at that time, the spiritual master Rama Mishra handed over the reins of his school. It is called Nathamuni school. And he gave him the title Yamunacharya. So it is said that Lord Ranganatha came in the dream of Yamunacharya and told him to go get Ramanujacharya to come to Srirangam. So these are very, very famous acharyas, alvars. And Prabhupada talks about his wonderful composition. Yamunacharya mainly composed in Sanskrit. And that verse we also read was in Sanskrit. So Prabhupada, while he was talking about this verse, he said that anybody who can control sex life will become the greatest person in this world. And he gave the example of Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. So Mahatma Gandhi, even though he was a Grihastha, at the age of 36, he started completely restraining from sex life. And Prabhupada says that his prowess and his ability to challenge the greatest power of his time. At that time, England was the greatest empire ever existed, bigger than the Roman Empire. Right? They used to say the sun never sets on the British Empire. Because right from China all the way to South America, completely every single continent, every single place was under the British rule. And Mahatma Gandhi challenged such a powerful nation, not with some big, huge army or this thing. There was no army. Right? Simple, non-violence, non-cooperation. When so much provocation was there, so much this thing, still, Can you imagine, right? Somebody is coming to beat you up with batons and people just stand and beat me. How many people can you beat? 10, 15, 20, 100, 200? How many people can you kill? A few hundred, few thousand? Can you kill a whole nation? Can you beat a whole nation to subjugation? You cannot. And that was the power with which, Prabhupada said, his strength and power came from his brahmacharya. The word brahmacharya basically doesn't mean, it applies only to young brahmacharis. Brahmacharya can be practiced by all the ashramas. Right? And that is an important lesson that we learn from this verse. In fact, when Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how to do Hatha Yoga. Right? Anybody remembers how Krishna describes how we should do, where you should do and all that? Yeah, you should go to a secluded place. Yeah? Yeah, not too high, not too low. Right? Focus on the tip of your nose. Yeah, you should be half closed eyes. And the same verse describes you have to have an unagitated mind and you should have strict celibacy. Then you can concentrate on the Paramatma in the heart. That is the process. So, this means different things for different ashramas. And we should properly understand this because this has to be practiced by everybody in every ashrama. This said, oh no, I am a Grihastha. It's not for me. No. Grihastha, Prabhupada used to say, this is like a Grihastha is the most difficult to practice and you are the one who should practice the most. Right? Like you are in a candy store but you should not eat the candy. Right? So that is how Prabhupada used to describe this. So let us understand this. Right? This itch, it's like a itch, such a wonderful example. Kandu yanena. Right? When there's an itch, actually this itch is better. For those who have allergies, you can say you get itching of the eyes. A lot of people are nodding because I also get. When allergies come and the eyes itch, it is practically impossible to hold your hands from touching your eyes. So difficult. So difficult. How many of you get this? Many of you are lifting it. If I go to Goshala in the April time, if I touch one cow, that's enough. Because in fact, any time I touch a cow, because of the dust mites, I'm hyper allergic to dust mites. So I usually wear a face mask when I go and sometimes goggles also. and immediately wash my hands and face. But it itches so much. But you touch your eyes and you just rub once like this. Just once. You don't have to rub more than once. Once you rub like this. That itch becomes 5 times more. But when you rub, it feels like, it's so nice. Because it relieves the itch for that split second. And instantly, now that 5x becomes 10x. And red, blood red. Like within seconds, your eyes will become blood red. And it's itching and burning like anything. You can't do anything. It's like that. The only way to tolerate there is just keep quiet. Just tie your hands behind your back. You can't, if you touch, material sense, this itch of sex life is like that. In fact, Prabhupada says in many places, if you have attraction to the opposite sex, either man to a woman to a man, doesn't matter. It shows you're conditioned. It shows that you are a criminal of this world. This is the shackles that Maya Devi creates to keep you bound to this world. I keep saying, this is described as Durga. Durga means it's a prison house. Right? A prison house, we're all prisoners. We don't seem to have any shackles. We don't seem to have any bars. What does this mean? How are we prisoners? The invisible shackles that are holding you is the attraction to the opposite sex. It'll keep you bound to this world. Nobody has to do anything. Happily you will stay here. Wantingly you will stay. You will listen to the jailer's instructions. So one has to understand this. So which is the first ashrama? Brahmacharya. What is the purpose? What is the main purpose of brahmacharya? But celibacy for what? Celibacy is a means to education, character building. Even, let's not even talk about spiritual education. Because you see, you have to also learn about this world. Material education, understanding of this world is needed. See, all of us understand this. By now we all understand. Each of us is born with certain amount of intelligence. Right? Isn't it true? Some people have more, some people have less. Isn't it true? By some age you will come to know, okay, this is my level of intelligence. Now, can you change that? You can change how much you know, but the level of intelligence you have, you cannot change much. One single thing that can make a difference of about 40 to 50%. One single thing. What is it? Celibacy. As soon as a young mind, if they start thinking of boyfriend, girlfriend, or any attraction to if they fall into that, it is natural. Hormones will come, body will develop. When they become teenagers, 12, 13 years, 10 years. For girls, sometimes it's even earlier. Naturally, the body develops. And then all these hormones are just flowing through the brain. But one is practiced and told, just tolerate for some time. Because just few years if you tolerate, right? If you don't go behind boyfriend, girlfriend when you are a teenager, right after you finish your education, everybody will be behind you. Why don't you marry? Why don't you marry? Right? Same parents, same this thing saying, no boyfriend, no girlfriend. Same people, please go after a boyfriend. Marry. Why are you not marrying? Just a little tolerance. And if 40 to 50% reduction in your brain capacity. Everybody has different capacity. But immediately. That is why you will see anybody who really succeeds in studying well, doing well, you will see, ask yourself, you can experiment with yourself, you can experiment with others, you can check. So very, very clear. One single thing, as soon as the mind gets interested in boyfriend, girlfriend, this thing, that thing, business, gone. So those are able to tolerate that itch during the most critical parts of their life, significant change in their outlook for the entire life. Isn't it? Nowadays, without proper education, without having a proper this thing, we're all knowledge, everybody is a knowledge worker. If you don't have knowledge, what work will you do? Right? And single thing, just a little tolerating of the itch for 3-4 years. You're not able to tolerate the itch. Actually speaking, it is not even, getting up to undergrad only. Once you get into college, from there your whole life will change. Just those 4 years of high school. That's all. Because if you learn to do 4 years of high school, you will easily do in your undergrad. Just those 3-4 years, if you're not able to understand how this world works, your whole life you will suffer. Right? So that is why in the age of brahmacharya, student life, strictly prohibited. One has to, like, very, very carefully, very this thing. There are many ways of, this thing. If you have good friends, if you have good this thing, you can easily get over all these things. The power of knowledge, the pleasure of intellectual happiness is so much higher than sense gratification. Once you start tasting it, you don't have to tell anybody. You yourself will say, what is this useless thing? Right? Param drishtva nivartate. Now, as a householder, grihastha, it is said that for most people, you may not be able to practice. Very, very, very few people who are born highly sattvic, upbringing, and those who are practicing, either you're practicing Krishna consciousness very steadily, they can continue to practice and skip the grihastha ashram, go straight to vanaprastha or sannyas. Right? So basically, when we say that somebody is a brahmachari and they're already in their mid-20s, more than their 20s, they are now said to be taken vanaprastha for all practical purposes. So you're skipping the grihastha ashram in between. For everybody else, majority of the people, there's grihastha ashram. Now, in the grihastha ashram, one has to practice brahmacharya. It's an oxymoron. How can you practice brahmacharya in grihastha ashram? Right? That's what the Shastras say. Right? Now, the way to practice this, you see, again, you want to enjoy the pleasures of grihastha ashram. If you really want to properly enjoy the pleasures of grihastha ashram, because there are some pleasures in grihastha ashram, one has to practice proper celibacy, brahmacharya. That is the only time, because you see what happens, just like the eye example I gave, you keep scratching the itch. It only gets worse and worse. You see in this world, there's a research organization called Pew Research. They do very scientific research on different aspects of this world. They see that they do, you see, when you ask people this thing, when you do proper surveys, you can find out, most married people cannot maintain fidelity. Right? They cannot remain chaste. It is the natural, because just because, you are indulging in sex life doesn't mean your urge for sex life will go away. Those who are uncontrollably indulging, it gets worse and worse. And invariably, you are especially, it doesn't matter man or woman, but more men, they get attracted to everything. And so, infidelity is one of the biggest causes of divorce in this country. And whatever we say, in all this Western world, even in India nowadays, huge, high divorce rates. 50%, 60%. Nowadays, the latest research was that divorce rate slightly dipped in Europe. It came down by 2-3%. It came down. What is this? Suddenly, how come people are becoming this thing? Anybody knows the reason why divorce rate dipped in Europe? Marriage rate came. Nobody is marrying. So basically, they're living together and separating, and it is not counting under the divorce just because they're not married. That's the only reason it has reduced. What is this? All these live-in relationships and all this, do you think anybody is happy? So much pain in this thing. There is one conservative, his guy name is Jordan Peterson. He's a very renowned academician. And he says, a live-in relationship is the perfect way to destroy any chance of having a happy life, married life. You're beginning the relationship, and this thing that I don't trust you, you don't trust me, but we will try to figure this out. Right? So that is why in the Shastras it said, you want to change ashram? Marry, take responsibility. You will never, no husband will be ever happy with his wife, no wife will be ever happy with the husband. You can take it in writing. It is never in the history, it will never be there in the history. Right? It doesn't happen, it doesn't exist. What exists is proper understanding between husband and wife, and you have to go beyond. First thing you have to do is go beyond sense gratification. If that is the basis of your this thing, that's why in the Kali Yuga it is said, as Kali Yuga progresses, marriage is only based on sense gratification, and it will be destroyed. It will never exist, because that is the basis. It is never going to exist. Because Grihastha, you are allowed to enjoy the pleasure of Grihastha ashrama, but you have to do a sacrifice. What is that sacrifice? Raising children is the sacrifice. If you do not together take that as your prime duty and spend lot of time and energy on it, meaning you are stealing. You are stealing pleasure without paying the price. You cannot enjoy. Can any robber enjoy anytime? No. Material nature will give you nicely. You might think, I'll get away with this law, that law, but material nature will nicely give you. Just like when they are young people, they indulge in unrestricted sex, material nature nicely gives them all kinds of sexually transmitted diseases. For life they will be suffering. That's the nature of the world. You cannot escape the laws of nature. You are in a prison. You are in a prison house, in a perfect prison. If you do nicely, be a nice person, you will get nice. You will become, let's say, like when you are a nice prisoner, what happens? Huh? In fact, if you're a nice prisoner, they will in fact make you assistant to the jailer and all that. You will actually be sitting, you'll in the offices and all, you'll go there nicely, you'll have nice, everybody is logging there, all these crazy things. These people are allowed to walk around this thing and all that. You're almost like not in prison. That is Krishna consciousness. If you want to experience some level of Vaikuntha living in this world, only one way to do it, be Krishna conscious. So it almost looks like, because you can experience almost like you're still a prisoner. You try to go out, they will put you back in. But you're allowed to come out, go in, nobody checks you. You're walking around, outside you're walking around in the offices of the jail. And nobody says, they know you are there, they know you are a good person, they won't touch you. And also, you'll get quick parole. You'll be pardoned early and you'll be sent back. Right? So this is following Krishna consciousness. So, Grihasthas have to be very careful. Now, even as a Grihastha householder, one has to be very careful. Prabhupada used to say, man is like, what did Prabhupada compare man and woman to? Who is butter? So, when fire comes near butter, what will happen? It will naturally melt. So, one has to be very, very careful in practicing. Either you are a brahmachari, or you are a householder, or you are a vanaprastha, or you are a sannyasi. Follow the rules of your ashrama very, very, very strictly. If you do not follow, the consequences are very, very bad. That's all I can tell you. And you will experience yourself. If you do not follow, when you are a brahmachari, stay out of this business. Just tolerate each for a few years. Anyway, you want to become a grihastha, spend your time, right, going beyond sense gratification. Together, connect to Krishna. Just do the tapasya that is needed, which is bring up children in a nice Krishna conscious way so that they can be good assets to the world. Spend your time and energy there. And a Grihastha is the only one who earns for the entire, all the other ashramas. You have to take care of the brahmacharis, you have to take care of the vanaprasthas and the sannyasis. If a Grihastha is not able to give a significant portion of his earnings towards taking care of the other ashramas, you are not doing your duty. There will be consequences for that. That's your only job. You are allowed for this, you take care of the rest of them. That's your job. Nobody else is supposed to work. Brahmachari is not supposed to work. Vanaprastha is also not supposed to work. Sannyasis, obviously not. They should not work at all. Right? Now, Vanaprastha is a very, very important. If you properly practice Grihastha ashrama by being very regulated, right? By bringing up children properly, and also, while being a Grihastha, Prabhupada has given some guidelines when you should indulge in sex, when you should not. If you follow those things, then Vanaprastha becomes easy. You start dissociating from this. Naturally also, as I kept saying, no husband will be ever happy with wife, no wife will be happy with husband. So, good. By now children have also grown up, this thing you can say, okay, naturally you can, but if you both have become Krishna conscious, you will start developing mutual respect for each other. You start valuing the Krishna consciousness of the person and not the individual characteristics and this and that. Then there is a sense of respect and love and caring comes. And so then together you are serving and become more and more fixed up in serving the Supreme Lord. That is what Vanaprastha is. Right? Again, one has to properly practice. And then some of the Vanaprasthas will become a sannyasi. Right? Sannyasi means you are voluntarily accepting death from this society. Right? And you are agreeing, to take the entire world. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now, a sannyasi, one should not take sannyas, very frivolously. It's a very, very, the Prabhupada used to say, because some of his sannyasis fell down, he used to say, Vantasi. You're eating the vomit. You've thrown up vomit and now you're going and eating it. It's a very, sorry state of affairs. So one has to take it up only when you have reached a certain level of maturity in that. Okay? So we see here in this verse, we are getting the importance of practicing celibacy at different levels and understanding that this is an itch. It just needs to be tolerated. How do you tolerate this itch at different stages of ashramas is a little different. We'll end here. Granthraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Bol Premanande.